They told everyone I gave my sister a $15,000 wedding gift. I gave $5,000. I also gave up weekends, saved every penny, and skipped vacations to make it happen. But when the DJ handed me the MIC, I gave them something they weren't ready for, the truth. I'm Charlotte Willis, and I've been playing the role of the perfect eldest daughter for 33 years. This morning, that carefully constructed facade came crashing down with 8 words from my second cousin, Diane. $15,000, Charlotte. You're so generous. I was standing by the mimosa bar at my sister Rachel's pre-wedding brunch, trying to balance a plate of eggs Benedict while avoiding my mother's critical gaze across the room. The champagne flute in my hand trembled slightly as I processed Diane's enthusiastic embrace. I'm sorry, I managed, certain I'd misheard over the jazz quartet my parents had hired for this intimate gathering of 70 guests. Your wedding gift, Diane gushed, her voice carrying across the country club's mahogany-paneled dining room. Margot just told us all about it. $15,000. When my daughter gets married, I hope her sister is half as generous as you. The eggs Benedict turned to sawdust in my mouth. I forced a smile, the same one I'd perfected after years of family gatherings where my achievements were minimized and my failures magnified. Oh, Mom shouldn't have mentioned it. But of course, she had. I could see Margot holding court near the French doors, her silver bob perfectly coiffed, her St. John suit impeccable as always. She was gesturing animatedly to a cluster of relatives, no doubt spinning her narrative about her generous eldest daughter. The daughter who'd sacrificed so much for family. The daughter who understood duty. The daughter who had actually given $5,000, not $15,000. $5,000 that represented 6 months of cancelled dinner plans, 12 declined weekend trips, and countless hours of overtime at the PR firm where I'd been grinding myself into dust. $5,000 that had meant choosing generic groceries over name brands, patching my winter coat instead of replacing it, and telling my friends I was taking a break from dating because I couldn't afford to split checks at restaurants. Charlotte. My mother's voice cut through the crowd like a blade wrapped in velvet. Come here, darling. The Weatherbys want to thank you personally. I excused myself from Diane and made my way through the obstacle course of linen-covered tables and Rachel's sorority sisters. Each step felt like walking deeper into quicksand. The Weatherbys, old family friends who'd been at every significant event since I could remember, beamed at me with a mixture of admiration and something else. Pity. Or was it the particular brand of smugness that comes from witnessing someone else's family demand the impossible? Charlotte, Mrs. Weatherby clasped both my hands in her cold, paper-thin ones. Your mother just told us about your gift. How wonderfully generous. Though I must say, it's no surprise. You've always put family first. Always put family first. The words echoed in my skull, bouncing off memories like a pinball machine of resentment. The semester I dropped out of my master's program to help with Dad's medical bills. The promotion I'd turned down because it required relocating, and Mom had made it clear that abandoning family wasn't an option. The raises I'd negotiated only to watch them disappear into the black hole of family emergencies, repairs, and Rachel's various needs. It's nothing, I heard myself say, the automatic response that had been programmed into me since childhood. Good daughters don't seek recognition. Good daughters give quietly. Good daughters certainly don't keep receipts. But I did keep receipts. Every single one. My mother's hand landed on my shoulder, her manicured nails digging in just enough to remind me of my place. Charlotte's always been our rock, she announced to the gathering audience. Even as a little girl, she understood responsibility. When Rachel came along, Charlotte just naturally stepped into her role as protector and provider. Protector, provider, not daughter, not individual, just a function in the family ecosystem, as essential and unnoticed as the foundation of a house. The wedding is going to be absolutely perfect, Mom continued, her grip tightening incrementally. Thanks to Charlotte's contribution, we were able to book the pavilion's gold package, the 10-piece band, the premium bar, the imported orchids, all of it possible because Charlotte understands what family means. The room spun slightly. The gold package. I knew that package. I'd seen the pricing when I helped Rachel with vendor research. The gold package upgrade alone cost $12,000. They'd taken my $5,000, my sweat, my sacrifice, my sleepless nights, and used it as a down payment on a lie. Then they'd multiplied that lie by 3 and served it to everyone we knew with champagne and canapes. Excuse me, I managed, extracting myself from my mother's grip. I need to use the ladies' room. I didn't run. Good daughters don't run. They glide gracefully away from situations that make them want to scream. They maintain composure even when their carefully constructed world is revealing itself to be a hall of mirrors, each reflection showing a different distortion of the truth. The bathroom was mercifully empty, all marble and soft lighting that somehow made my face in the mirror look even more haggard. I gripped the edge of the sink and forced myself to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, the technique my therapist had taught me before I had to stop seeing her. Therapy, after all, was a luxury I couldn't afford after helping pay for Rachel's car repairs. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister, the bride-to-be. Where are you? Mom wants to take family photos. Family photos. Another performance. Another moment where I'd stand in my designated spot, slightly behind, slightly to the left, the supporting player in the theatrical production of The Perfect American Family. But as I stared at my reflection, something shifted. The woman looking back at me wasn't the dutiful daughter anymore. She was 33 years old, successful in her own right, and tired. So unbelievably tired of being written into a story where she was nothing more than a plot device for other people's happiness. I pulled out my phone again, this time opening my banking app. The facts were there in stark black and white. The $5,000 transfer cleared 3 days ago. The note I'd added for Rachel's special day below it. Months of careful saving, each deposit annotated with what I'd given up to make it happen. This wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about the story. The story my mother had been telling for years, where I was the selfless eldest daughter, who gave everything and expected nothing. The story that kept me locked in a role I'd never auditioned for. The bathroom door opened and Rachel floated in, a vision in her designer rehearsal dress. My baby sister, the princess of the family, the one who'd never had to choose between groceries and someone else's needs. There you are. She checked her lipstick in the mirror, oblivious to my internal combustion. Mom's being absolutely insane about these photos. You know how she gets. Yes, I knew exactly how she got. Rachel, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She paused in her priming, meeting my eyes in the mirror. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face, guilt, knowledge, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Oh, you know Mom, she said breezily. She's been telling everyone about your gift. $15,000. And I told her she shouldn't broadcast it. But you know how proud she gets. She knew. They all knew. And they were all complicit in this fiction that painted me as wealthier, more generous, more sacrificial than I actually was. A fiction that would follow me through every family gathering, every holiday, every future milestone where my actual gifts would pale in comparison to the legend they'd created. We should get back, Rachel said, already heading for the door. The photographer charges extra if we go over time. Of course, he did. Everything about this wedding was extra, extra grand, extra expensive, extra fictional. I followed her out, but something had fundamentally changed in that bathroom. The mirror had shown me something I'd been avoiding for years. I wasn't a character in their story anymore. I was about to write my own. The hotel room was supposed to be my sanctuary, but even here, I couldn't escape the weight of the lie. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, bank statements spread across the duvet like evidence in a crime scene, which in a way, they were. I'd started the spreadsheet 3 years ago, after a particularly brutal Thanksgiving where Dad had casually mentioned needing new hearing aids. Insurance doesn't cover the good ones, he'd said. And I'd watched Mom's eyes find mine across the table. By the following Monday, I transferred $2,000. The spreadsheet had begun as a simple record, now it was a monument to my financial hemorrhaging. The numbers didn't lie, even if my family did. Line by line, I traced the history of my generosity. January 2022, $3,000 for Rachel's graduate school application fees. March 2022, $5,500 for Dad's emergency dental surgery. June 2022, $4,000 for the family vacation I couldn't attend because of work. September 2022, $8,000 for Mom and Dad's roof replacement. December 2022, $2,000 for Rachel's car transmission. The list went on, each entry meticulously documented with dates, amounts, and purposes. I'd even kept screenshots of the text messages, Rachel's tearful voice notes about not being able to afford textbooks. Mom's careful hints about the house needing repairs. Dad's mentions of medical bills, always followed by, but don't worry about us. 3 years, $46,850. I minimized the spreadsheet and opened my investment account. The retirement fund I'd started at 25, once robust with promise, now showed a balance that made my stomach clench. I was 33 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Boston while my colleagues bought condos and planned European vacations. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend, Ava. How's the wedding prep going? Send pics of you in the bridesmaid dress. I stared at the message, then pulled up our text thread. Ava had been my voice of reason for years, the only person who ever questioned the family dynamics I'd accepted as normal. I started typing. They told everyone I gave $15K for the wedding. I gave $5K. Her response was immediate. What? Then, Charlotte, are you kidding me? Dead serious. Mom announced it at brunch. To everyone. My phone rang. Ava's face filled the screen, her expression already set to furious. I'm putting you on speaker, she said without preamble. James is here and he needs to hear this because I've been telling him about your families, for years, and he thinks I'm exaggerating. Hi, Charlotte, James's voice came through, gentle and concerned. Ava's about to break our coffee table. What happened? I told them everything, the brunch, the announcement, the way everyone had looked at me with such admiration for a gift that existed only in my mother's imagination. How Rachel clearly knew the truth, but played along. How the lie had been crafted to make me seem wealthier than I was, setting a standard I could never maintain. That's financial abuse, Ava said flatly. I'm not being dramatic. That's literally what this is. It's not, I started, the automatic defense rising in my throat. Charlotte, James's voice was firm. I'm an attorney. What Ava is describing, taking your money for years, lying about amounts to manipulate you into giving more, creating false narratives to pressure you through public shame, that's textbook financial abuse. Financial abuse. The words sat heavy in the room, even through the phone connection. They are my family, I said weakly. That makes it worse, not better, Ava shot back. When does it end? When you can't retire. When you're 60 and still funding Rachel's kids' college because family helps family. I pulled up another document on my laptop, my budget for the next year, carefully calculated to recover from the wedding gift. Rice and beans featured prominently. So did a second job. I'd been considering freelance PR work that would eat my weekends, but might help rebuild savings. You know what the real kicker is? I said, scrolling through my bank history. I've never been late on a payment to them. Never said no when it mattered. I've been the perfect eldest daughter, and it's still not enough. They had to invent an even better version of me. What are you going to do? James asked. I looked at the spreadsheet again. At 25, I'd had dreams. A master's degree, travel, maybe starting my own firm someday. At 33, I had an Excel file documenting my transformation from a person into a family ATM. I don't know, I admitted. The wedding's tomorrow. I can't make a scene. Why not? Ava's voice was sharp. They made a scene. They announced a lie to 70 people. They're counting on you being too polite to correct them. She wasn't wrong. The whole system kept running because I stayed silent. Because I smiled and pretended it didn't matter, even as they spent the money I'd worn myself thin to earn, because good daughters don't keep evidence, don't ask for acknowledgement, and definitely don't challenge their mothers in front of others. I opened a new browser tab and started researching. The pavilion's gold package was even more expensive than I'd thought. $15,000 wouldn't even cover it entirely. They'd used my $5,000, added $10,000 of fiction, and were probably still in debt for the rest. But the story they'd told made it seem like I'd single-handedly funded this fairy tale wedding. Another text came through, this time from my cousin Michael. Just heard from Mom about your gift. Amazing. Makes my $1,000 look pretty cheap. Then another from my aunt. Margot told us about your generosity. Each message was a bar in the cage they'd built around me. If I corrected the lie now, I'd look petty. If I didn't, I'd spend the rest of my life being measured against a standard that never existed. Charlotte, Ava's voice brought me back. You still there? Yeah, I said, closing the laptop. I'm here. I'm just processing. Process this, she said firmly. They stole from you. Not just the money you gave, but the credit for money you didn't give. They stole your reputation and replaced it with one that serves them better. The spreadsheet had autosaved, like it always did. $46,000 over 3 years, plus the $5,000 for the wedding, $51,000 of love, duty, and sacrifice. But they needed it to be $15,000 for the wedding alone. Needed me to be the sister who could drop that kind of money without blinking. Needed the story more than they needed the truth. I have to go, I said. Rehearsal dinner's in 2 hours. Charlotte, I know, I interrupted. I know what this is now. Financial abuse. I can name it. That's something. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my hotel room, surrounded by the paper trail of my family's consumption of my life. Tomorrow, my sister would walk down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my car, to music played by a band funded by my fictional generosity. They'd taken my money. They'd taken my time. They'd taken my dreams and ground them into dust to build their castle. But naming it, that was the first crack in the foundation. The spreadsheet stared back at me. Each line a scar, each total a theft disguised as love. Financial abuse. Not a loan, not help, not family taking care of family. Abuse. The word tasted like freedom and fury in equal measure. The rehearsal dinner was held at Bistro Margot, because of course it was. My mother had probably chosen it for the name alone, another way to stamp her identity on every aspect of this wedding. The private dining room glowed with candlelight and possibility, every surface reflecting the warm light like promises of happiness. I arrived precisely on time, wearing the dress Mom had suggested, a conservative navy sheath that made me look like what I was supposed to be, successful, but not showy. Elegant but not attention-seeking. The perfect backdrop to Rachel's sparkle. Charlotte. My Aunt Patricia swooped in before I could even hand my coat to the attendant. $15,000. When Robert and I heard, we just couldn't believe it. So generous. It's really, I started, but she was already pulling me toward a cluster of relatives. Everyone, Charlotte's here, the hero of the hour. Hero. The word burned. I smiled and accepted their praise, each compliment another stone in the monument to my fictional generosity. Uncle Robert shook my hand like I was a business partner who'd closed a major deal. Cousin Lisa hugged me and whispered that she hoped to be half as successful as me someday. Successful. They saw the gift and imagined a life I didn't have, corner offices, and stock portfolios and the kind of disposable income that made 5 figures a reasonable wedding present. They didn't see the generic cereal in my cabinet, or the shoes I'd had resold 3 times. There's our angel, Mom's voice cut through the crowd. She glided over in a beaded cocktail dress that probably cost more than my fictional gift. Charlotte, darling, the Pembrokes want to meet you. They are considering you for their daughter's wedding planning, after hearing about everything you've done for Rachel. Everything I've done, the phrase was loaded, a depth charge of meaning below its surface. I let her lead me to the Pembrokes, wealthy friends from the club whose daughter was getting married next spring. They looked at me like I was a specimen of something rare, the devoted sister with deep pockets and no boundaries. Margot tells us you're in PR, Mrs. Pemmer *O**OK said, studying me over her martini. You must be very successful to afford such generosity. I do all right, I managed, the lie sitting like ash in my mouth. All right. Mom laughed, the sound like crystal breaking. She's being modest. Charlotte's always been driven. While other girls her age were partying, she was building her career. Also she could take care of family. The narrative was shifting in real time, adding new chapters to my fictional biography. Now I wasn't just generous. I was strategically generous, someone who'd mapped out their entire life around the ability to fund family dreams. Speaking of which, Dad appeared at Mom's elbow, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Charlotte, could I talk to you for a moment privately? My stomach clenched. Private conversations with Dad usually meant one thing. I followed him to a quiet corner near the coat check, watching his shoulders hunch with what I'd learned to recognize as financial anxiety. The wedding expenses, he started, then stopped, tried again. Your mother might have gotten a little carried away with some of the details. Dad, the flowers alone. He rubbed his face. Do you know what orchids cost? And she insisted on having them flown in from Thailand. Thailand. Charlotte. I waited. There was always a pause before the ask, a moment where they pretended we were just sharing concerns rather than establishing a transaction. I hate to even mention it, he continued. Right on schedule. Especially with how much you've already done. The $15,000. 5,000, I corrected quietly. I gave $5,000. His face went through a series of expressions, confusion, embarrassment, then something that looked almost like anger before settling on disappointment. Your mother said, I know what Mom said, the words came out sharper than I'd intended. She lied. I gave $5,000, which was already more than I could afford, and she told everyone it was $15,000. Charlotte. His voice carried that particular tone of parental disappointment I'd been trained to fear since childhood. This isn't the time for whatever this is. Your sister's getting married tomorrow. Whatever this is, like the truth was an inconvenience, a selfish disruption of their carefully orchestrated performance. "You're right," I said. "This isn't the time." The time was before Mom decided to use my actual gift as a foundation for a lie. "Lower your voice," he glanced around, checking if anyone had noticed. People are starting to look. People are starting to look. The family motto, the guiding principle that had shaped every decision, every sacrifice, every swallowed protest of my entire life. "Let them look," I said. But I did lower my voice. "Your mother's under a lot of stress," he said, shifting tactics, planning this wedding, wanting everything perfect for Rachel. Maybe she misspoke. She didn't misspeak. She lied to everyone about money I don't have. He sighed, the sound of a man who'd had this conversation too many times in too many variations. "What do you want me to do about it, Charlotte? Go tell everyone your mother exaggerated. Embarrass her. Ruin your sister's wedding." There it was, the trap that always worked. Any attempt to claim my own truth was reframed as an attack on the family. Any boundary was selfishness. Any protest was sabotage. "I want you to acknowledge that it's wrong," I said quietly. "Just once, just between us, admit that it's wrong to lie about what I gave." He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, maybe recognition, maybe guilt. But when he spoke, his voice was tired. "The flowers are already ordered," he said. "The band's been paid. The photographer's booked. Right or wrong doesn't matter now. What matters is getting through tomorrow without drama." Without drama, another family commandment. Drama was conflict. Truth-telling was anything that disrupted the smooth surface of our public performance. "Ah, Charlotte, there you are," Rachel's voice rang out across the room. She practically floated over, radiant in a white cocktail dress that served as a preview for tomorrow's main event. "The wedding planner needs to confirm the order for speeches. You're speaking right after the first dance, but before Mom." I looked at my sister, my baby sister, who'd never been asked to choose between her dreams and someone else's needs, who'd never had to calculate the cost of being a good daughter in dollars and cents. "Actually," I said, an idea forming like a storm system in my chest, "I'd like to speak before Mom, if that's okay." Rachel blinked, surprised. The traditional order was always parents last, the final word on family legacy and love. Before Mom, she glanced at our father, who was already retreating back to the bar. "I mean, I guess if it's important to you." "It is," I said. "Very important." She squeezed my hand, mistaking my intensity for emotion about her big day. "Of course, Char, whatever you want. You've already given us so much." So much. If she only knew how much. Or maybe she did know, and that was worse, that she knew and let the lie flourish anyway, fertilized by my silence and watered by my compliance. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of toasts and stories, each one painting our family as something out of a magazine spread. Mom held court at the head table, directing the narrative like a conductor with an orchestra. Dad smiled and nodded, playing his part. Rachel glowed with bridal joy and anticipation, and I sat with my new knowledge, heavy as gold and twice as costly. Tomorrow they expected me to stand up and play my role one more time, the generous sister, the family ATM, the one who gave everything and asked for nothing in return. They were right about one thing. I was going to give them something tomorrow, just not what they expected. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the floor with my suitcase open, staring at the contents like they held answers. The bridesmaid dress hung in the closet, lavender and perfect, waiting for tomorrow's performance. But spread before me was something else entirely, a small photo album I'd impulsively packed, barely bigger than my hand. I'd found it while searching for my passport last month, buried in a box of college memories. Now I opened it carefully, the plastic pages crackling with age. The first photo stopped my breath, Rachel and me at the beach. She couldn't have been more than 4. I was 14, gangly and sunburned, holding her hand as she faced down the waves. I remembered that day. Mom had been at a charity luncheon. Dad at golf. The nanny had called in sick, so I'd taken Rachel to the beach myself, slathering her in sunscreen and teaching her to jump over the small waves. In the photo, she was mid-leap, face split with pure joy, trusting completely that I wouldn't let her fall. Page after page revealed the archaeology of our relationship, Rachel on my shoulders at the state fair. The two of us covered in flour, after a disastrous attempt at making Mom's birthday cake. Her first day of kindergarten, clinging to my leg. My high school graduation, where she'd made me a crown out of construction paper that said World's Best Sister. These weren't staged family portraits or holiday card photos. These were the moments in between, the ones nobody thought to document except me. I'd been the one with the disposable camera, capturing proof that underneath all the dysfunction, there had been real love. My phone buzzed. Ava checking in. How was dinner? Did you poison anyone's champagne? No murders yet, I typed back. But I found something. I took a photo of one of the album pages and sent it to her. It showed Rachel at maybe 7, proudly displaying a lopsided ceramic mug she'd made for me in art class. Charlotte was painted on the side in uneven letters. I still have that mug, I added. Ava's response was swift. Okay, that's adorable, but don't let it derail you. Kids grow up. She's not 7 anymore. She was right. The Rachel in these photos, the one who drew me pictures and saved her Halloween candy to share with me, had grown into someone who could sit silent while our mother lied about my gift. Who could text me about photo timing while knowing I'd been turned into a fiction. But looking at these pictures, I realized something else. The gift I'd actually given, the $5,000 that had cost me so much, that had been real. It came from the same place as those beach days and baking disasters, from genuine love, not performed obligation. The lie hadn't just stolen credit for money I didn't have. It had contaminated the truth of what I did give. I pulled out my laptop and opened a new document. If I was going to speak tomorrow, I needed to be prepared. No rambling, no getting lost in emotion, just truth delivered with the kind of precision I'd learned in PR. But what could I say? Thank you all for coming to celebrate my sister's wedding, which you think I paid for, but actually didn't. I closed the laptop and picked up the album again. Near the back, I found what I'd been subconsciously looking for, a photo from Rachel's college graduation. I'd flown in despite having bronchitis, sitting through the ceremony with a fever because she'd begged me to be there. In the photo, she was hugging me, her mortarboard askew. Both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember. That trip had cost me $800. I didn't have flight, hotel, rental car, graduation dinner at the restaurant she'd chosen. I'd put it on a credit card that took 6 months to pay off. But in that moment, with her arms around me and her future spread before her like a promise, it had felt worth it. The photo blurred, I wiped my eyes angrily. This was exactly what they counted on, this emotional quicksand that kept me stuck. The genuine love tangled so tightly with the exploitation that I couldn't separate them. My phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach drop, wedding planner. Charlotte. Hi, it's Miranda from Pavilion Events. I'm so sorry to call this late, but I have you down to speak before your mother tomorrow. I just wanted to confirm the AV needs. Will you need the projection screen? Projection screen for photos or a slideshow? Your mother mentioned you might want to share some memories. Of course, she had already, trying to stage manage my speech, turn it into another set piece in her production. No screen, I said firmly. But I would like a handheld mic instead of the podium. Oh, Miranda sounded surprised. Of course, most people prefer the podium for notes, but I won't need notes. There was a pause. All right, then. Handheld MIC. No screen. You're scheduled right after the father-daughter dance, before your mother's speech. Perfect. After I hung up, I sat with the album in my lap, weighing truth against love, honesty against harmony. The wedding planner probably thought I was preparing some touching tribute to sisterly devotion. Mom probably expected the same, a gracious acknowledgement of family bonds that would reinforce the narrative she'd created. They had no idea I was sitting on a hotel room floor, planning to detonate 33 years of carefully constructed lies. But first, I had one more call to make. Rachel answered on the second ring, music and laughter loud in the background. Cha, are you coming back? We're doing karaoke at the bar. I'm tired, I said, which wasn't a lie. But I wanted to tell you something. What? I could hear her moving to somewhere quieter. I looked at the photo in my hand, 7-year-old Rachel with her handmade mug. I kept it. The mug you made me. I drink coffee from it every Sunday. Silence, then softer. You do, every Sunday. It's my favorite mug. I spelled your name wrong. You spelled it exactly right, for a 7-year-old who loved her sister. I could hear her breathing. Could picture her face, the way she bit her lip when emotions ambushed her. Sure, she started, then stopped. Tomorrow's going to be crazy. I know. I mean, really crazy. Mom's in full control mode. She's already texted me 12 times about timeline adjustments. I know, I repeated. I've seen your speech. She paused again, and I wondered if she was going to acknowledge the elephant in the room, the $15,000 elephant. Just, whatever you're planning to say, make sure it's what you really want to say, not what anyone else wants. Okay, my throat tightened. Okay. I have to go. Marcus is doing Don't Stop Believin', and it's a tragedy. Go save everyone's ears. Cha, I love you. You know that, right? Like, really love you. Not just, you know, not just as an ATM. Not just as a function. The words she couldn't say hung between us like a bridge she was trying to build at the 11th hour. I know, I said softly. I love you too. See you tomorrow. After she hung up, I carefully closed the album. Tomorrow, I would stand up in front of everyone who'd been told the lie. I would hold a microphone instead of hiding behind a podium, and I would give them something real. Not the $15,000 they'd been told about, not the performance they expected, just the truth, served at room temperature, no garnish. It wasn't the gift anyone wanted, but it was the only one I had left to give. The pavilion lived up to its reputation. Every surface seemed to shimmer with possibility, from the crystal chandeliers to the gold-rimmed china waiting at each place setting. I arrived early, partly to avoid the pre-ceremony chaos, and partly to steel myself for what was coming. Cha. Charlotte, thank God you're here, my cousin Emily rushed over, her own bridesmaid dress swishing. Your mom's having a crisis about the flowers. Something about the orchids being too purple. I let her pull me toward the bridal suite, where I could already hear my mother's voice carrying through the door. Inside, Rachel sat at the vanity while 2 stylists worked on her hair, her face serene despite the hurricane of activity around her. Mom stood near the window, holding an orchid-like evidence in a crime. This is clearly lavender, not white with lavender touches like we specified. She thrust the flower at the wedding planner. For what we paid. For what I paid, I almost said, but bit my tongue. Not yet. Charlotte, Mom spun toward me. Tell Miranda this isn't what we discussed. You were at the floral consultation. I hadn't been at any consultation. I'd been working overtime to afford the gift they'd already tripled in their telling. Fine, Charlotte. This is your sister's wedding. And it's beautiful, Rachel interjected from the vanity. Mom, please. The flowers are perfect. I moved to stand behind Rachel, meeting her eyes in the mirror. She looked stunning, every inch the bride from a magazine cover. But there was something in her expression, a tightness around her eyes that I recognized. You okay? I asked quietly. Just nervous, she reached up to squeeze my hand. Normal wedding stuff. Normal. Nothing about our family was normal. But we'd all agreed to pretend otherwise for so long that the performance had become second nature. Ladies, we need to start getting you dressed, one of the stylists announced. Ceremony starts in 90 minutes. The next hour passed in a blur of satin and hairspray. I let myself be positioned and posed, zipped and fluffed. The photographer appeared, directing us through combinations. All the bridesmaids, just the sisters, 3 generations of women in every shot. I smiled, the smile I'd perfected over decades, the one that said everything was wonderful. We were blessed. Family was everything. Charlotte, your phone's buzzing, Emily said, handing me my clutch. 3 messages from Ava. Remember, truth over comfort. You've got this. I smiled genuinely for the first time all morning. Charlotte, a moment. Mom appeared at my elbow, steering me toward a quiet corner. She looked impeccable, her mother of the bride dress a masterpiece of understated elegance that probably cost more than my monthly rent. About your speech, she began, and I could see her shifting into management mode. I thought it would be lovely if you mentioned the family vacations to the Cape. You know, how you taught Rachel to swim. Those summers were so special. Those summers where I'd been unpaid childcare while my parents socialized, where I'd spent my teen years making sandcastles instead of hanging out with friends my own age. But sure, special. I've got my speech handled, I said neutrally. Of course you do. She straightened my necklace with practiced fingers. You've always been so capable, so responsible. I was just telling Mrs. Davidson earlier about your generous gift. She was so impressed. Her daughter's getting married next year, and she said she hopes Kimberly's brother is half as generous as you. There it was again. The lie, polished and presented like truth, setting a standard I'd never offered to meet. Mom? Oh, and darling, try to keep it under 5 minutes, she added, gliding away before I could respond, already moving on to her next crisis. The caterers are very strict about timing with the hot appetizers. I stood there, feeling the weight of the next few hours settling on my shoulders like a lead shawl. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Of course it was. Every dollar, mine and theirs, and whoever else they'd convinced to contribute, had been spent in service of this moment. Rachel floated down the aisle like something out of a fairy tale, her smile radiant and real. Marcus waited at the altar with tears in his eyes. Even I felt my cynicism waver, as they exchanged vows. But during the recessional, as I walked back up the aisle on the arm of a groomsman I'd met twice, I caught fragments of whispered conversations. $15,000. Can you imagine? Such a generous sister. Must be nice to have that kind of money. Each comment was another needle, another reminder of the fiction that had taken on a life of its own. The cocktail hour was worse. Person after person approached me with variations of the same theme. How wonderful I was, how selfless, how lucky Rachel was to have me. I smiled and deflected. Smiled and deflected until my face hurt, and my soul felt bruised. You look like you need this. Marcus's brother appeared with 2 champagne flutes, offering me one. Thank you. I took a larger sip than was probably appropriate. I'm Jake, the significantly less successful sibling, he grinned. Gave them a KitchenAid and called it a day. That's a great gift, I said, meaning it. Not $15,000, but it'll make killer margaritas. He studied me with curious eyes. You don't look like someone who just dropped the price of a car on a wedding gift. I almost laughed, or cried. Maybe both. What does that person look like? Happier. Probably less like they are being slowly tortured by small talk. This time I did laugh, surprising myself. That obvious? Only to a fellow sufferer of family occasions. He clinked his glass against mine. Here's to surviving with our sanity intact. Before I could respond, the wedding planner appeared. Charlotte, we are moving into the reception. You'll be seated at the head table. Of course. Of course. The head table, where I'd be on display for the entire room, where everyone could see the generous sister, the family savior, the woman who existed only in my mother's imagination. As I took my seat, I felt the weight of what was coming. The father-daughter dance was after dinner, then my speech, then whatever came after, because I had no illusion that speaking the truth would leave things unchanged. I looked at the microphone waiting on its stand by the dance floor. Such a small thing to hold so much power. In PR, I'd learned that controlling the narrative was everything. For 33 years, I'd let my family write my story. In approximately 1 hour, I was taking the pen back. The champagne bubbled in my glass, catching the light from the chandeliers around me. People laughed and chatted, celebrating a love story built on a foundation that included my silence, my sacrifice, and now my fictional wealth. I raised the glass to my lips and made myself a promise. The last lie they'd tell about me was the one I'd correct in front of everyone. After that, they'd have to find a new story, one that didn't require me to bankrupt myself, financially or emotionally, to be worth telling. The bathroom at the pavilion was a sanctuary of marble and soft lighting, designed to make everyone look their best. But as I stared at my reflection, all I could see was the cost of being the good daughter, written in the fine lines around my eyes, the tension in my jaw, the way my shoulders curved forward, as if carrying invisible weight. I turned on the cold water, let it run over my wrists. The trick to not crying at a wedding I'd learned long ago was to focus on physical sensations, the cold water, the pinch of my shoes, the way the bridesmaid dress compressed my ribs. The door opened, and in the mirror, I saw my past walking toward me. 8-year-old Charlotte would have loved this bathroom. All shiny surfaces and fancy soap. 8-year-old Charlotte who shared her Halloween candy without being asked, who read bedtime stories when mom was too busy, who never kept score, because love wasn't supposed to have a price tag. But that little girl had grown up in a house where love was transactional, where every gift came with compound interest, where being family meant being available for withdrawal at any time. You can do this, I told my reflection. The woman looking back didn't look convinced. The door opened again. This time, it was real. Rachel rustled in, her wedding dress bustled for dancing. Hey, she said softly. Emily said you were in here. Just needed a minute. She moved to stand beside me at the sinks, both of us looking at our reflections rather than each other. Side by side, the family resemblance was undeniable. Same nose, same stubborn chin, but where my face showed the wear of years of giving, hers still had the smoothness of someone who'd been allowed to receive. Mom's looking for you, she said finally. Of course she is. She wants to go over the speech order again. Make sure you know you're going before her. I laughed, short and bitter. Oh, I know. Rachel turned to face me directly. Charlotte, what are you planning? The truth. That's what I'm afraid of. The honesty of it caught me off guard. Not denial, not deflection, just acknowledgement that the truth was something to fear in our family. You know it's wrong, I said. The lie about the $15,000. You know it's wrong. Of course I know, her voice was barely above a whisper. But it's done now. Everyone believes it. What good does correcting it do? What good? I turned to face her fully. Rachel, do you have any idea what I've given up? Not just for this wedding, but for years. Do you know I dropped out of my master's program to help with Dad's medical bills? That I turned down a job in London because Mom said it would tear the family apart. That I haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years because every spare penny goes to some family emergency. I didn't ask you to. No, you didn't. You didn't have to. The request just appeared. Like magic. Charlotte will handle it. Charlotte always handles it. And now Mom's told everyone I'm rich enough to drop $15,000 on a wedding gift like it's nothing. Do you know what that lie makes me? She shook her head, tears starting to form. It makes me the eternal wallet. The one who can always give more because, look how much she gave before. It sets a precedent I'll be paying for the rest of my life. So what? Rachel's tears were falling now, but her voice had steel in it. You'll embarrass Mom at my wedding, humiliate Dad, make everyone uncomfortable. What does that accomplish except ruining my day? There it was. The trap. My truth versus her happiness. My need to be seen as I really was versus her need for a perfect wedding. Once again, I was being asked to choose between my own well-being and family harmony. I'm not trying to ruin anything, I said quietly. I'm trying to save what's left of myself. By destroying everything else. By telling the truth. If that destroys everything, then what was everything built on? She grabbed paper towels, dabbing carefully at her makeup. You know what it was built on. The same thing it's always been built on. You sacrifice. I benefit. You give. I take. You stay quiet. We all pretend it's normal. That's our family. Charlotte, that's who we are. The clarity of it, spoken aloud, was devastating. She knew, had always known, and had accepted her role as beneficiary as easily as I'd accepted mine as provider. It doesn't have to be, I said. But it is. She threw the paper towels away, checked her reflection one more time. And in about 10 minutes, Dad's going to dance with me to What a Wonderful World. And then you're going to get up and give a speech. And whatever you say is going to define how I remember my wedding day for the rest of my life. She moved toward the door, then paused. I know it's not fair. None of it, the money, the lies, the expectations. I know what you've given up, but I'm asking you, begging you. Please don't make my wedding the place where you decide to flip the table. What about what I'm asking for? The words came out cracked. Just once for someone to stand up and say, Charlotte gave enough. Charlotte did enough. Charlotte is enough. Without the giving. Rachel's hand was on the door handle. I can't be that person. Not today. Today, I need to be the bride. And I need you to be my sister. Tomorrow, she trailed off. Tomorrow you'll be on your honeymoon, and I'll still be the woman everyone thinks gave $15,000 I don't have. I'm sorry, she said. And for a moment, I believed she meant it. I really am. But I can't save you, Charlotte. I don't know how. I only know how to be what I've always been in this family. The one who receives what you give. She left, the door closing with a soft click that sounded like finality. I stood alone in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked older than 33. She looked tired. She looked like someone who'd given everything and been left empty. But she also looked, for the first time in years, ready. The door opened again. This time, it was my mother, entering like a general surveying a battlefield. There you are. Her tone suggested I'd been deliberately hiding. The father-daughter dance is starting. You need to be ready. I'm ready, I said, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Your mascara is smudged. She pulled a tissue from her clutch, moved to fix it. I stepped back. It's fine. She studied me, and I saw the moment she registered something was different. The compliant daughter she'd trained for 3 decades was missing. And in her place stood someone she didn't recognize. Charlotte, she said slowly. You're not going to make some kind of scene, are you? Define scene. Don't be smart with me. This is your sister's wedding. Whatever issues you think you have, think I have. The laugh that escaped was sharp enough to cut. Mom, you told everyone I gave $15,000. I told them my daughter is generous, that our family supports each other, that we are blessed enough to give meaningful gifts. Where's the lie in that? In the number. In the fiction that I have that kind of money. In the pressure that creates for every future event. Oh, Charlotte, the disappointment in her voice was an old weapon, well used. Must you always make everything about money? Can't you just be happy that your gift, whatever the amount, contributed to your sister's joy? My gift, whatever the amount. I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the tiny cracks in her foundation. You can't even acknowledge the truth between us, can you? Just the two of us, no audience, and you still can't say it. Say what? That you lied. That you took my $5,000 and turned it into $15,000 for your own purposes. That you've been taking from me for years and it's never enough. She drew herself up, every inch. The offended matriarch. How dare you? How dare I? What? Tell the truth. Name what's happening. Use my voice for something other than saying yes, and how much. You're being hysterical. I'm being honest. For the first time in my life, I'm being completely honest, and you hate it. We stared at each other. 3 decades of manipulation and sacrifice and unspoken contracts hanging between us like a blade. You're going to ruin your sister's wedding, she said finally, playing her last card. No, I said, moving toward the door. I'm going to give a speech about what gifts really mean. What I do with that information is up to you. I left her there, standing in the bathroom, that made everyone look their best, unable to make the truth look like anything other than what it was. The father-daughter dance was everything a wedding dance should be. Dad led Rachel in slow circles as Louis Armstrong's voice filled the pavilion, singing about trees of green and red roses, too. I stood at the edge of the dance floor with the other bridesmaids, watching my father's face, as he gazed at his youngest daughter with uncomplicated pride. He'd never looked at me that way. My achievements had always come with addendums. Charlotte got promoted, but she works too much. Charlotte bought her own condo, but she should be focusing on marriage. Charlotte handles everything, but she shouldn't be so rigid about money. The song was winding down. My heart rate was picking up. Miranda, the wedding planner, appeared at my elbow with a microphone. You're up next, she whispered. Remember, handheld mic, no podium. I took it, the weight familiar from work presentations. But this wasn't about quarterly reports or campaign strategies. This was about 33 years of accumulated truth compressed into whatever minutes I could claim before someone stopped me. The music faded. The DJ's voice boomed, and now, please welcome the sister of the bride, Charlotte, who has something special to share with us tonight. Applause scattered through the room as I walked to the center of the dance floor. The light seemed brighter here, or maybe that was just the weight of every eye in the room. I saw my mother near the head table, her spine rigid with warning. Dad was helping Rachel back to her seat. Both of them flushed from dancing. The room settled into expectant silence. Good evening, everyone, my voice was steady. Years of PR training had taught me how to project calm even when my insides were churning. For those who don't know me well, I'm Charlotte, Rachel's older sister. A few smiles, nods of recognition. Normal so far. I want to talk about gifts tonight. I shifted the microphone, found my stance. Not the wrapped packages on the gift table, though those are lovely. I want to talk about the gifts we give each other that can't be wrapped. The invisible ones, the ones that cost us in ways that don't show up on bank statements. I saw Mom start to move, but Dad caught her arm. Good. I needed just a few more minutes. When Rachel was 4, she was terrified of the ocean. We were at the Cape for our family vacation, and she wouldn't go near the water. So, I spent 3 days building her trust, holding her hand, teaching her that the waves weren't monsters. I smiled at the memory. By the end of the week, she was jumping over waves like a champion. That was a gift. My time, my patience. My teenage summer spent coaxing a little girl into the water instead of hanging out with kids my own age. Rachel was watching me now, her eyes wide. A few people made soft sounds of appreciation, the sweet story of sisterly devotion. When she was 12, she needed braces. Insurance didn't cover the full cost, and money was tight, so I picked up extra shifts at the mall. Came home smelling like pretzel dough and exhaustion, and handed over my paychecks. I kept my voice light, conversational. That was a gift, too. Not just the money, but the hours, the sleep, the college spring break trip I couldn't take because we needed to make the orthodontist payment. The room was quieter now. This wasn't the speech they'd expected. When Dad needed heart surgery, I was 25. I'd just started saving for graduate school, business school at BU. I'd already been accepted. I found his face in the crowd, saw the recognition dawning. But surgery isn't cheap, even with insurance. So that savings became a gift. The MBA became a someday that turned into never. Charlotte, my mother's voice cut through the room, sharp with warning. I kept going. These gifts, time, opportunity, dreams deferred, they add up over the years. They compound like interest. But here's what I've learned about invisible gifts. When you give them quietly, consistently, without keeping score, people forget their gifts at all. They become expectations, obligations, just what Charlotte does. I pulled out my phone, held it up. I started keeping track 3 years ago, not out of resentment, but out of curiosity. How much does love cost when it's measured in dollars and sacrifice? The number, if anyone's wondering, is $46,000, plus the opportunities one can't calculate. The life I didn't live because I was busy funding someone else's. Gasps rippled through the room. Mom was on her feet now, but something in my expression must have stopped her. Now, you might have heard that I gave a particularly generous gift for this wedding. I let the pause stretch, saw understanding dawn on some faces. $15,000, I believe, was the number mentioned. That would be generous indeed. Extraordinary, even for someone with my salary, which might make you wonder, if I could give $15,000 for a wedding, what else could I give? What other financial miracles might I perform for family? I looked directly at my mother. The truth is, I gave $5,000. $5,000 that took me 6 months to save. That meant rice and beans for dinner more nights than I care to count. That meant saying no to my own life to say yes to my sister's wedding. And that $5,000, given with love despite its cost to me, was somehow not enough. It had to be transformed into $15,000 in the telling to make a better story, to make me seem like something I'm not, wealthy, endlessly capable of giving, a well that never runs dry. The microphone picked up someone's sharp intake of breath. I couldn't tell who. But here's the thing about wells, I continued, my voice stronger now. They do run dry. And when you keep drawing from them without ever replenishing, without ever acknowledging the source, eventually all you get is dust. Charlotte, that's enough. Dad's voice was surprisingly firm. You're right, I said, looking at him. It is enough. I've given enough. I've sacrificed enough. I've been quiet enough. And tonight, I'm done pretending that my worth to this family is measured only in what I can provide. I turned to Rachel, who was crying now, Marcus's arm around her shoulders. Rachel, I love you. I've loved you since the day Mom brought you home from the hospital. Every gift I've ever given you came from that love. But love shouldn't require emptying yourself. It shouldn't demand that you pretend to have resources you don't have, be someone you're not, or stay silent when lies are told about you. I raised the microphone one last time. Address the room. So, here's my real gift to my sister on her wedding day, the truth. That real love doesn't require performance. That honest gifts, however modest, are worth more than inflated lies. That families should build each other up, not use one member as a foundation for everyone else's comfort. And that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling the dysfunction, and start speaking your truth. I set the microphone down on the gift table, right between a wrapped KitchenAid and a crystal vase. Congratulations, Rachel and Marcus. May your marriage be built on better foundations than the one I'm choosing to step off tonight. I walked back to my seat through absolute silence, my heels clicking on the dance floor, the only sound in the room. I didn't run. I didn't rush. I moved with the same measured pace I'd used my entire life. But for the first time, I was walking away from the role they'd written for me instead of toward it. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then, from somewhere in the back, the sound of one person clapping, then another. Not everyone, not even most, but enough to tell me I wasn't alone in seeing the truth of what our family had become. I sat down at the head table, poured myself a glass of water with hands that barely shook, and waited for whatever came next. The microphone remained on the gift table, abandoned like the fiction it had helped me dismantle. The scattered applause died quickly, smothered by the weight of collective shock. I could feel the room reorganizing itself around my words, alliances shifting, judgments forming. The wedding coordinator stood frozen by the DJ booth, clearly unsure whether to proceed with the scheduled events, or treat this like the emergency it had become. Then my mother moved. She strode across the dance floor with the purposeful gait of someone who'd spent 58 years controlling narratives. Her face was composed, but I knew her tells, the slight tremor in her left hand, the way she touched her pearl necklace. She picked up the abandoned microphone with a smile that could have cut glass. Well, she laughed, the sound tinkling and false. Charlotte always did have a flair for the dramatic. Too much time in PR, I suppose, making stories out of everything. Stories. She was already reframing it, turning my truth into fiction. Since we are sharing family memories, she continued, her voice steady now, finding her rhythm, let me share one of my own. Charlotte was 8 when Rachel was born. Do you know what she said when we brought her sister home? She said, I'm going to protect her forever. And she has, perhaps too well. Perhaps we've relied on her too much. It was masterful. Really, acknowledging just enough truth to seem reasonable while painting me as an overprotective sister who'd lost perspective. The $15,000. Well, that was my error. She pressed a hand to her chest, the picture of maternal humility. I was so proud of Charlotte's generosity, so moved by her sacrifice that I may have overstated things. You know how mothers are. We see our children's gestures and multiply them by our love. A few people made sympathetic noises. She was good at this. Had been doing it far longer than I'd been resisting it. But what Charlotte said is true, Mom continued, and I tensed. She has given so much, too much perhaps, and if we've made her feel unappreciated, then that's our failure as a family. She was stealing it, taking my revolution and turning it into her redemption story. The mother who loved too much, expected too much, but only out of pride in her remarkable daughter. Thomas, darling, come here. She beckoned to my father, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Rachel, sweetheart, Marcus, let's do this properly. And then, in a move I should have seen coming but didn't, she orchestrated a family tableau on the dance floor, the unified front, ready to heal the breach with synchronized emotion. Charlotte, she said, turning to where I sat. Would you join us? It was a trap. If I refused, I looked petty. If I joined them, I was accepting their reframing of my truth as a family squabble already on its way to resolution. I stayed seated. I think I've said what I needed to say. The microphone caught every word, broadcasting my refusal to play along. Mom's smile flickered but held. Of course, you've said so much already. The emphasis on so much was delicate but clear. Rachel, darling, would you like to say anything? Rachel stood slowly, Marcus helping her navigate the train of her dress. She took the microphone from our mother, and for a moment, I thought she might surprise me, might acknowledge what I'd revealed, might choose truth over performance for once. As she looked at me, then at the crowd, then back at our parents. I just want to say that I love my family, all of them, and I'm grateful for everything they've done to make this day special. She handed the microphone back and buried her face in Marcus's shoulder. The crowd made sympathetic noises, the poor bride, her special day marred by family drama. Perhaps, Mom said, reclaiming control. We should move on to the cake cutting, Miranda. The wedding coordinator sprang into action, grateful for direction. Music started playing. Servers began moving between tables, the machinery of the reception grinding back to life. But the atmosphere had changed. Conversations were hushed. Glances kept finding me, and I could feel the story morphing with each retelling. Excuse me, Jake, Marcus's brother, appeared at my elbow. That took serious guts. Or serious stupidity, I replied, not looking at him. Now, I've got 3 sisters. What you described, that's my middle sister's life. Always bailing everyone out, never getting credit. He paused. She wouldn't have the courage to say it, though, especially not here. Courage. I laughed, short and bitter. Is that what this was? What else would you call it? Before I could answer, Uncle Robert approached our table. I braced for impact, but his face was thoughtful rather than angry. Charlotte, he said quietly. That spreadsheet you mentioned, $46,000. I nodded, wary. Plus the wedding gift. Plus the wedding gift. He whistled, low. That's a down payment on a house. Yes, I said simply. It is? He squeezed my shoulder once and walked away, but I saw him pull his wife aside, their heads bent in intense conversation. Similar clusters were forming around the room. The extended family and friends processing what they'd witnessed, choosing sides or trying to avoid choosing altogether. Charlotte, Dad's voice. I looked up to find him standing beside my chair, looking older than his 63 years. Could we talk privately? I glanced around. Mom was holding court near the cake table, managing the narrative. Rachel and Marcus were posing for photos, pretending everything was fine. The show would go on with or without me. Fine, I said, standing. He led me to a small alcove near the coat check, away from the music and chatter. For a moment, we just stood there, father and daughter, with 33 years of complicated history between us. The business school thing, he said finally. I didn't know. Yes, you did. My voice was tired now, the adrenaline fading. You knew I'd been accepted. You knew I had savings. You knew what I gave up. I knew you helped with the medical bills. I didn't think about what it cost you. That's the problem, Dad. None of you think about what it costs me. It's just what Charlotte does. What Charlotte's for? He rubbed his face, looking every bit his age. Your mother, she means well. She sees the family as a unit. Everyone contributing what they can. Except I'm the only one contributing financially. When has Rachel ever helped with your bills? When has anyone ever helped with mine? You've never asked. Because I learned early that my role wasn't to ask, it was to give. I leaned against the wall, exhausted suddenly. Do you remember when I was 16 and needed braces? You said we couldn't afford them. The money had to go to Rachel's piano lessons, because she had real talent. Do you remember what you told me? His face went pale. He remembered. You said I had a good enough smile already. That I didn't need to be perfect, just reliable. Dad, reliably giving, reliably sacrificing, reliably shrinking my life to fund everyone else's. And the one time I give a gift that actually costs me something, but isn't quite enough for the image Mom wants to project. She lies about it, makes me seem richer than I am, so the story looks better. She's proud of you. She's proud of a fictional version of me. The one who can drop $15,000 without blinking. The one who doesn't need her own dreams, because she's too busy funding everyone else's. I straightened, meeting his eyes. I'm done being that fiction. Dad, whatever happens next, I'm done. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or grief for the daughter he'd helped create, and was only now really seeing. The wedding, he said weakly. Rachel's day. We'll continue just fine without me playing my assigned role. I moved toward the main room. I'm going back to the table. I'll stay through the cake cutting, for Rachel's sake. After that, I'm leaving. Your mother. We'll do what she always does. Revise history until it suits her. I paused at the entrance to the ballroom. But I won't be there to watch her do it. And Dad, the next time you need money, ask Rachel. See how that conversation goes. I left him there and walked back to my seat, past tables of whispering guests and relatives who didn't quite meet my eyes. The cake cutting was announced. Rachel and Marcus posed with the knife, and I watched it all from my seat at the head table, like watching a movie about someone else's life, because it was someone else's life. Now, the Charlotte who would have smiled and smoothed things over, who would have apologized for causing a scene, who would have somehow ended up writing a check to cover the emotional damages. That Charlotte was gone. What remained was just me, poorer in fiction, but richer in truth. It would have to be enough. The cake had been cut, photographs taken, and I was making my way toward the exit when they cornered me. Not in the main ballroom, where witnesses might intervene, but in the corridor leading to the parking lot. Mom, Dad, and Rachel, still in her wedding dress, but with tears cutting tracks through her makeup. Leaving so soon. Mom's voice was deadly quiet, the tone she'd used when I was young and had embarrassed her in public. Running away after dropping your little bomb. I stayed for the cake, I said evenly. That's more than you deserved after the lie you told. The lie? She stepped closer, and I could smell her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the same scent she'd worn my entire life. The only lie told tonight was you pretending your gift was about love, when it was clearly about keeping score. $46,000. You kept a spreadsheet, Charlotte. What kind of person keeps a spreadsheet of their love? The kind who's been bled dry and gaslit into thinking they're selfish for noticing. Gaslit. Rachel's voice was shrill. You humiliated me at my wedding. You turned my reception into your therapy session. I told the truth, I said, looking at her directly. If the truth humiliated you, maybe you should examine why. You're sick, she spat. Actually sick. Who does this? Who takes their sister's wedding and makes it about them? Who takes their sister's $5,000 gift and turns it into $15,000 for social capital? I didn't, she stopped, caught. I didn't tell Mom to say that. But you knew she did, and you said nothing. Thomas stepped between us, hands raised like a referee. Enough, both of you. This is neither the time nor the place. Then when is the time, Dad? I asked. When is it ever the time to talk about how this family functions? When Rachel needs money for her next milestone. When you need another surgery. When Mom decides to renovate the kitchen again. You're being cruel, Mom said, and for the first time tonight, her composure cracked. We are a family. We help each other. That's what families do. No, I said firmly. That's what I do. The rest of you take, and then you lie about how much I gave to make yourselves look better. Look better. Mom's voice rose. You think this is about appearances. I know it is. Why else inflate the number? Why not just say I gave what I gave? Because $5,000 looks cheap. The words exploded from her. Do you understand? The Weatherby's daughter got $10,000 from her brother. The Pembrokes gave their daughter $20,000. And my daughter, my successful PR executive daughter, gives $5,000. It looks like we raised a selfish child. It looks like our family doesn't value each other. There it was, the truth beneath the lie. So, you lied to save face, I said slowly. You took my gift, which cost me months of sacrifice, and decided it wasn't good enough for your image. Our image, she corrected. Our family's image, which you've now destroyed. Mom, Rachel interjected. Please. Rachel, she needs to hear this. Mom turned back to me, eyes blazing. Do you know what people will say now? Poor Charlotte. Keeping track of every penny. Poor Charlotte, so put upon. Poor Charlotte, the family martyr. Is that what you wanted to be? Pied. I laughed, the words ripped out of me. I wanted to be seen. Just once. I wanted to be seen as I actually am. Not the ATM, not the safety net, not the one who can always give more. Just Charlotte, who gave what she could and had it thrown back in her face as not enough. It wasn't, Dad started. It was exactly that. I cut him off. You all sat there while she told that lie. Every single one of you. You let everyone believe I'm wealthier than I am, more generous than I am, more capable of giving than I am. Do you have any idea what that does? The expectations it creates. Expectations you created, Mom shot back. By always saying yes, by always helping, by being reliable. You've never made me do any of that. You're right, I said and watched surprise flicker across her face. You didn't make me. You just made it clear that my value to this family was contingent on it. That being loved meant being useful, that being a good daughter meant having no boundaries. That's exactly what it is. I pulled out my phone, showed them the bank app still open to my savings account. The balance was smaller than any of them would guess. This is what's left after years of being the good daughter. This is my safety net, my emergency fund, my future. Less than $2,000 because everything else went to you. Rachel made a sound like she'd been punched. Charlotte, I didn't know because you never asked. None of you ever asked what it cost me. You just assumed I had it to give. We assumed, Dad said quietly, that you would say no if you couldn't afford it. When did you ever make that okay? I asked. When was I ever allowed to say no without being selfish, uncaring, not putting family first? The silence stretched between us, years of unspoken contracts finally dragged into the light. So what now? Mom asked, her voice cold. You've made your point publicly, dramatically. What do you want from us? An apology. A refund. I want you to stop, I said simply. Stop asking. Stop expecting. Stop lying about what I give. Stop treating me like a resource instead of a person. Fine, she snapped. We'll never ask you for anything again. Is that what you want? To be cut off from your family? I want to be part of a family, not a financial institution with relatives as board members. Same thing, apparently. She turned to Rachel. Come on, sweetheart. You have guests to attend to. Marcus is looking for you. Rachel hesitated, torn between following our mother and staying. Charlotte, go, I said, suddenly exhausted. It's your wedding. Go be with your husband. This isn't over, she said quietly. We need to talk. Really talk. When things calm down. I nodded, not believing it would happen. Crisis always had a way of smoothing into normal in our family, with me resuming my role and everyone pretending the rupture never happened. But as they walked away, Mom's arm protective around Rachel, Dad trailing behind, I realized something had permanently shifted. The spell was broken. The role I'd played for so long had been publicly abdicated. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be the same pattern repeating. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. Bar across the street. First round's on me. You've earned it. Then another from Ava. Heard through the grapevine. You went nuclear. Good for you. Call me when you're ready. And surprisingly, one from my cousin Emily. That was brave. Mom's freaking out. But I think you're right. Family shouldn't work like that. I stood in the corridor, wedding music drifting from the ballroom, and felt the strange lightness of having nothing left to lose. My family was in there dancing and drinking and probably discussing my breakdown in hushed, horrified tones. Let them. I'd spent 33 years purchasing their love with my life. The transaction was finally, irrevocably, over. The exit door was right there, and beyond it, a life where my worth wasn't measured in dollars given or dreams deferred. Where $5,000 could just be $5,000. Where love didn't come with compound interest. I pushed the door open and walked into the night air, breathing deeper than I had in years. Behind me, the wedding continued, the band playing, glasses clinking, the machinery of celebration grinding on, but I was no longer part of the production. I was no longer the foundation everyone else built their happiness on. I was just Charlotte, broke, exhausted, honest Charlotte. For the first time in my life, that was enough. The bar across the street was nothing like the pavilion. Dim lighting, sticky floors, and a jukebox playing classic rock. Jake had claimed a corner booth and already ordered 2 whiskeys. Figured you might need something stronger than champagne, he said as I slid in across from him. You figured right. I took a sip, letting the burn ground me in reality. Thanks for this. Thank you for the show. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Most entertaining wedding I've been to in years. Glad someone enjoyed it. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind that only strangers who've witnessed each other's worst moments can share. So, what happens now? He asked eventually. I honestly don't know. It was the truth. I've been playing that role so long, I'm not sure who I am without it. Maybe that's the point. You get to find out. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts, calls, notifications. I turned it face down, not ready to deal with the aftermath yet. Tomorrow would bring damage control, family meetings, attempts at reconciliation, that would inevitably circle back to the same patterns. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in this dingy bar and be nobody's anything. You know what the ironic part is? I said, the whiskey loosening my tongue. I would have kept giving, even knowing what it cost me, even knowing they didn't appreciate it. I would have kept giving until I had nothing left. The lie about the $15,000. That's what broke the spell. Not the decades of sacrifice. Their need to make it seem like more than it was. Pride, Jake said simply. Gets us every time. An hour later, I finally checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Mom, 12 from Rachel, a series of increasingly frantic texts from Dad. But scattered between them were other messages. Cousins who'd lived through similar dynamics. Friends who'd wondered when I'd finally snap. Even Mrs. Weatherby, of all people, had sent a text. Good for you, dear. About time someone told the truth in that family. I scrolled through them all, then opened a new message to Rachel. I love you. That was never a lie. But I'm done being the family fund. When you get back from your honeymoon, if you want a relationship with me as your sister, not your bank, I'm here. If not, I understand. Be happy with Marcus. You deserve that. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The bar was filling up with the late-night crowd. Normal people living normal lives, probably with their own family dramas and financial struggles, but also probably not keeping spreadsheets of their exploitation. I should go, I said finally. Long drive back to Boston tomorrow. You could stay another night, Jake suggested. Let the dust settle. No. I was surprised by my own certainty. I need to go home. Figure out what comes next. Outside, the October air was crisp with promise. Across the street, the pavilion glowed like a jewel box. The wedding was still in full swing. Through the windows, I could see people dancing, living out the fairy tale I'd helped finance, but could no longer participate in. I got in my car, but didn't start it immediately. Instead, I pulled out the photo album I'd brought, flipped through it one more time. All those memories, all that genuine love mixed with dysfunction. It didn't have to be thrown away. But it did have to be transformed. My phone rang. Ava, are you okay? She asked without preamble. I think so, I said, meaning it. I think I actually am. Good, because I've already started researching family therapists who specialize in financial abuse. You're going to need support to maintain these boundaries. I laughed, surprising myself, always thinking ahead. Someone has to. You've been too busy thinking about everyone else. After we hung up, I sat in the parking lot for another moment. Tomorrow would bring consequences. There would be family gatherings I'd no longer be welcome at, relationships that might never recover, a reputation in our social circle that would take years to rebuild, if ever. But there would also be freedom. Paychecks that stayed in my account, dreams that could be more than someday, maybe. The possibility of relationships built on something other than what I could provide. I started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the golden glow of the pavilion in my rearview mirror. On the radio, someone was singing about new beginnings. And for once, the cliché didn't make me cynical. 3 months later, I was sitting in my therapist's office. Yes, I could afford therapy now. When my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Hi, Charlotte. This is Marcus. Rachel doesn't know I'm reaching out. We just got our wedding photos back. And there's one I thought you should see. The photographer caught it right after your speech. Attached was a photo I hadn't known existed, me walking away from the microphone, shoulders straight, face calm. But in the background, slightly out of focus, was table 12, the cousins' table. And they weren't looking at me with shock or disapproval. They were looking at me with something like recognition, something like respect. Emily was clapping. So was her brother, Daniel, and their mother. My aunt, who'd always been treated as the family disappointment for marrying beneath her station. The rebels, the truth-tellers, the ones who'd been quietly pushed to the margins for not playing their assigned roles perfectly. I saved the photo, not as vindication, but as a reminder. I wasn't the only one who'd seen the dysfunction. I was just the first to name it publicly, to refuse the role I'd been assigned, to stop paying for love that should have been freely given. The wedding had been 6 months ago, when I finally heard from Rachel again. Not through text or call, but a letter, handwritten, which shocked me more than its contents. Charlotte, it began. I've started therapy, not because Mom suggested it, she thinks therapy is for weak people, but because Marcus insisted. He says the way our family functions isn't normal. That the wedding speech was a wake-up call. I'm beginning to see what you saw, what you tried to tell us. I'm not ready to talk yet. There's too much I'm still processing. But I wanted you to know I heard you. Finally, truly heard you. And I'm sorry it took me so long. I kept that letter, tucked it in the album with all those photos of us as children, before money became the language of love in our family. Proof that people could change, even if slowly, even if imperfectly. As for Mom and Dad, radio silence, which was, in its own way, an answer. They'd rather lose a daughter than admit the system was broken. Pride, as Jake had said, gets us every time. But I was building something new. Slowly, carefully, the way you do when you're learning to walk after decades of crawling, I joined a support group for adult children of emotionally manipulative parents. I started saving again, for myself this time. I even went on a few dates, though I was still learning how to be with someone without calculating what I owed them. The spreadsheet. I deleted it. All $46,000 of evidence. Gone with a click. I didn't need it anymore. The truth had been spoken. The receipts metaphorically thrown on the table for everyone to see. I gave my sister a $5,000 wedding gift. She wore a dress that cost twice that. My mother told everyone I gave $15,000, and I finally gave myself permission to stop paying for love that should have been free. Sometimes the most expensive gift you can give is the truth, and sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is stop giving at all. Thank you so much for listening to this story.